call the meeting to order. And the very first thing we'll do is swear in our new board members, committee members, and that's Chris LeBeau, Johnny Sloan, and Mitzi Blackburn. These people. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Do they need Bibles? I'm just kidding.
If anyone has one, they can use a Bible. We need three, actually.
No. I'm just kidding.
Please come and join me at the podium.
Look out.
I guess we can hold
Hold hands.
But you have to raise your right hand.
Oh,
please. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Mitzi Blackburn,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I have not directly or indirectly
that I have not directly or indirectly
paid, offered, or promised to pay,
paid, offered, or promised to pay,
contributed, or promised to contribute
contributed, or promised to contribute
any money or thing of value,
any money or thing of value,
or promised any public office or employment
or promised any public office or employment
for the giving or withholding
for the giving or withholding
of a vote at the election
of a vote at the election
at which I was elected,
at which I was elected,
or as a reward to secure
or as a reward to secure
my appointment or confirmation,
my appointment or confirmation,
whichever the case may be,
whichever the case may be,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Thank you. And now I will administer the oath of office. It's much shorter. I, please state your name,
I, Mitzi Blackburn,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office of
the duties of the office of
Historic Landmark Preservation Committee member
Historic Landmark Preservation Committee member
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States
and of the state,
and of the state,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, Mitzi, Christopher, and Johnny,
Yes, sir.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we go from there. I don't know if we need any committee introductions. We'll start right here and you could learn who we are. Right.
I'm Vicki Winthrop. I've been on the committee for 1 year.
I'm Charles Bradbury. I've been on the committee for 1 year.
Jeff Apt, I've been on the committee many years.
I'm Chris LeBeau. This is my first day on the committee.
Z Whitehead, I've been on here for a year or two.
Mitzi Blackburn, newbie.
John Sloan, ditto. I'm also a newbie.
They've been here about 30 minutes. Okay,
Yeah.
Les.
15.
Okay. Thank you and welcome among us. Now, the first item would be the approval of the minutes. And do I hear a motion about those minutes?
I make the motion that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay, any seconds?
Aye.
Okay, all right. How about any discussion about the minutes at this point? Okay, since there's no discussion, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. Now, we'll just go to the regular agenda, and we'll discuss the considered draft Historic Landmark Preservation Committee meeting procedures, and Jessica's going to lead us through that.
All right, so a bit of background, especially for our new committee members. At the February meeting, Hlpc had a discussion about the creation of meeting procedures, really for clarity. So that way someone that was applying could kind of see how these meetings were run, they could understand where public comment was, kind of what staff does on the back end once an application is submitted. And we gave several examples. One was for our Zoning Board of Adjustments. It's one of our Nacogdoches committees. There was also a few examples from Granbury and some other cities that have historic landmark preservation committees. And at the time, at the February meeting, the HLPC seated at the time said, we want staff to come up with a draft rather than having a subcommittee. And so it's taken a bit, but staff has come up with a draft for some meeting procedures. I won't read all of this to you because I hope and trust everyone has read through some of this. And of course, this is a discussion today. If y'all absolutely love everything I wrote, we can adopt as is. If there's some edits that still need to be done, you are not going to hurt my feelings, I promise. So majority of the items in here mirror our code of ordinances. That, of course, is not something this board can change. City council can, and at that time, these meeting procedures would be updated. So some of these items can't necessarily be changed. Other ones, if we need some more clarification, we can. It goes through here, you know, who can be on HLPC. Again, that's in the ordinance. What the membership term is, what officers we have for this committee. We do have a chair and vice chair. Right now, our chair rotated off, so Jeff is our vice chair, so he is acting chair at the moment. After everyone gets to know each other, probably at our September or October meeting, we will elect a new chair and vice chair. Talks about the officer duties are that our chair and vice chair do not have any special powers or votes do not carry more weight. It's just you are responsible for keeping this meeting running. We have our rules of order in here that if something is not covered in these meeting procedures, we default back to Robert's Rules of Order. Also, section 1.6 talks about what your historic preservation officer, which is myself, is responsible to do. And there's a lot more details on that in our code of ordinances as well. We talk in here about a quorum, as far as we have to have a quorum to conduct a meeting. Meeting types, as far as if we have a regular meeting, special meetings, work sessions, how public comment works, that there's a public comment for every single item on this agenda. And then later on, we talk about when we go into public comment, that, you know, essentially the chair states the item, staff explains it, we open for public comment, and then have further discussion. So that's listed in here as well. Also talks about where all of our official records go. They're just like any other city record. They're laserfish. They're open to the public. Anyone has access to those. And then the permanent record holder, I have to maintain all of those on my end in my office. Also, section 4 is the types of requests. That's more for clarity for the public if they'd like to see it. We have written out in here what types of items HLPC goes through, whether it's a COA, historic overlay zoning, demolition request, demolition by neglect, and then historic restoration grant. So really kind of lines out what HLPC is looking at. Also lines out that the application is required. You can't just come in and say, I'm going to paint my building, and I wrote it on a piece of paper. We have forms that are filled out, or forms that are already created. They're on our city website. We have printed copies, but essentially saying if you were going to apply for this board to review something, you actually have to fill out the full form and have the owner sign it and have complete information. It also has guidelines for applications and decisions, basically saying that every request for COA will be considered for approval based on the criteria in our ordinance. So it's not based on whether we like Chris or not. It's based on here's what the ordinance criteria is and here's why we're making these decisions. So that's written out in there as well. Also, like I mentioned, procedures for application review as far as the presentation of the application, public comment, committee discussion, and then a vote. Same thing in section 5. 5.5 is disposition of cases, lining out what powers HLPC has as far as approval, denial, approval with modifications, or no action taken. Lines out decisions by HLPC, that they'll be in writing, that everyone who applies will hear back from us in a set amount of time. So it's not just like we decide in a back room in the dark and then we never tell someone what happens. Like there's time frames on when we have to report back to them. And then that any decisions by HLPC can be appealed to City Council. And then also Section 7 is essentially saying that once this is adopted by us, how we can go about changing that in the future if you'd like to. So I'm happy to answer any questions about how we got to this, hear any edits, anything like that. This is really just a discussion item unless you absolutely love everything we wrote down and want to adopt it as is. But that's never really the case on any first draft, I don't think.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? No discussion?
I mean, it all looked good to me,
Yes.
but
No, go ahead.
it all looked good to me, but I don't have the experience that the other members of the board have, so.
I was gonna say, I haven't had a chance to look through it all completely. Is there a possibility that we could table it?
I think if you would, do we need a motion to table?
No, so this is just a discussion.
Okay.
If you
Okay,
say
all
we
right.
want to discuss this at our September meeting as well, we can put it back on there.
I think that's a good idea. Okay, any other discussion? So we'll consider this our next meeting, so read up on it. Okay. Then item B is discussion of potential adoption of principles for applications for certificate of appropriateness involving murals in our historic district. This is not murals in town, but it's specifically in our historic district. So,
Sure.
Jessica?
So and this is really just a discussion as well, so I'll kind of kick it off and then open the floor, and I will mention that you can tell our agenda heading was written by our city attorney, because I can't talk that complicated. So essentially, this agenda item, there's been some questions and concerns from HLPC members, some requests for additional clarification on COAs that deal with murals in our historic districts. So some of the information that's in your packet here today is taken from a September 7th, 2023 meeting that was between City Council and the Main Street Department. Initially, murals kind of started as a function of the Main Street Department, where Main Street was going to fund some of these. Since that time, essentially the Brushing Up NAC organization has become separate. I believe they were just awarded their 501c3, so they are a separate organization now. So this was a discussion on Main Street and murals and kind of how all that worked together. This was a discussion item. None of these were ever adopted, so some of these may still be very relevant. Some you may not think apply because it's not Main Street, but this was just kind of a jumping off point for us. Essentially what we are talking about today is discussion of potential adoption of principles. This would not take place of our city ordinances. That's something that has to be originated from City Council, but this could be principles for COAs that deal with murals in our historic districts, similar to our design guidelines. Those guidelines that were written in 1991, I believe, they're not written into ordinance, but they were essentially designed to help property owners figure out what's the most appropriate thing to do in your district, or what's the most appropriate thing to do in your old Victorian home or your 1960s commercial building. So really it's supposed to supplement our ordinance, but not take the place of it. So this is a discussion. I know Mrs. Schaffner, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, had some questions and concerns as well. So really this is kind of our jumping off point to have a discussion on what HLPC would like to see. One of the items in your packet, like I mentioned, is a screenshot of a presentation given at that September 2023 meeting. You also have the full presentation in front of you now, as well as some more information. I believe there's some other people that would like to speak about this, but I'm happy to answer any questions or anything like that you may have of staff. And one thing I forgot to mention. As far as this could be a discussion of potential principles. Once those are written up, they would have to be taken to City Council for formal adoption.
Okay, thank you. Anybody would like to speak to this?
The 1991 Nacogdoches Design Guidelines, where are those found?
So we have printed copies in my office. They're also on our city website. If you go to our historic sites page under historic preservation, there's a link there that has it in a digital format. So we have those, and I think we have, we reprint them every few years, but we have about 15 printed copies in my office.
Okay.
It doesn't say anything about murals, unfortunately.
No, it does not.
It talks about paint a bit, but it really kind of says make the paint accent, and really more of the paint discussion is about how painting on residential buildings or having it supplement your design scheme for your commercial building, so it doesn't specifically talk about murals.
There's some, we always have considered signage, which is different than a mural specifically. So, but that was always within those guidelines, so.
Jess, could you look at the possibility of including something that would make understood, not assigned a contract commitment on a part of the person who owned the property making the application to understand that they would be expected to maintain the integrity and the beauty of that particular mural, whatever it may be, because we should have some concern about what it's going to look like 7 years from now. I think you remember last time I asked how long would this last, and I guess depends on what kind of quality of paint and what kind of base material you used. But I would want to at least them have an understanding that was the expectation of the city that be maintained by that property owner as a commitment for proving that to be put in place.
As of right now, we don't have anything like that. I know that got brought up several years ago when, excuse me, when Reese Jewelry did the flowers on the front of their building. That's like a temporary art installation, I guess would probably be categorized as that. I think HLPC did the stipulation. They approved it with the expectation that those flowers would not fall into disrepair and things like that. So that's probably the closest we've come. We don't currently have anything on the books, but I can look into that.
I just think a person should know up front that there could be some expense involved with making this application. It's a lot better to know those things ahead of time than it is someone come back later and say, this is not looking very good, and so we'd really like for you to do something about the maintenance of it. And it'd be very easier to convey that in the original application.
Okay. I can certainly look into how we do that. It's something that.
And along those same lines, if the building were to change hands, someone else buys it, will that person be required to maintain and keep up that mural?
Can I'm not, we will open it up. And let's just a minute. Will anybody here want to say anything to it about this?
So,
Committee, right?
yeah, Jessica, you mentioned that we would put together these guidelines, these principles, and it would have to go to city council for them to make them official guidelines?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then what power do they have in decision-making?
So they are an additional, kind of a supplementary item, just like our design guidelines, where they are not necessarily regulatory as far as they're not written into ordinance. But it is something the committee could say, you know, we want to approve this mural because we believe it is a minimal alteration and it fits within our mural principles. So you can use it either for approval, denial, approval modifications is kind of a supplementary item, but it's not written into the ordinance. But it is something that is officially adopted and essentially approved by city council. So it's another tool in your tool belt, essentially.
I think the good guidelines are just so we're not all shooting from the hip. I don't like it. You know, that's not a good reason. So we have to say why.
A concern I have is setting a precedent. You know, that, I mean, things may be going well now, but, you know, 5 years from now, someone may be coming in and wanting to put up murals that are considered very offensive. And that's my concern, is establishing a precedent.
And I believe our city attorney, Jerry, will correct me if I'm wrong. I know cities do have some legs to stand on if someone was going to put up something that was, you know, nudity, hate speech, you know, anything like that. So we do have some recourse with things like that. So that's in place.
We have that already? Is that what
Believe
you're
so.
saying?
That's correct.
Where would those be written down? Is there a list of those kind of things?
Jerry Baker,
Yes.
City Attorney. No, there's not a list per se. It's just based on case law that's been out there.
Oh,
So
really? Okay.
essentially, the courts have recognized the ability of a city to regulate when it comes to something that's sexually explicit or something that cites hate, such as gang symbols or something like that. But other than that, they don't really allow much content regulation when it comes to murals or anything like that. Does that answer your question?
And that's, okay, that's good. And so that's what we're after, some way for this committee, seems to me, these guidelines, as far as the murals go, on which we would make a decision. Besides, like what I just said, I don't like it. That doesn't, you can never really argue with someone that says, I don't like it. You know, it's difficult anyway. So that's, to me, the point of the guidelines. Now, I'd like to question, the regular design guidelines that we have right now, I would think that they would trump anything on these mural guidelines. In other words, if a mural significantly changed the look of a building, of a building, to me that, in some ways, that's goes right back to our normal guidelines that we've been going by all along. I don't know if that makes sense to you. In other words, if you paint a building with a mural and all of a sudden no one sees the architectural features of that building, all they see is a mural. You have basically significantly altered that building. Now, I suppose it could be painted over, but nevertheless, it is a significant alteration.
And right now, with how our ordinance is written, the committee does have the option to say, we do not find that this is a minimal alteration to the building,
That's right.
like you mentioned, because now all of a sudden it's not a solid color and it's tie-dyed. And you all of a sudden can't see the architecture. So there is ordinances in there that you can lean on for mural approval, denial, approval,
good.
modification. But then these would be, these potential principles would be more specific if that's what the committee desires to do.
Okay.
I believe there is some public comment.
Okay, public comment?
I'm Kathleen Bellinger, 620 Logansport Street, Nacogdoches. And I did want to provide a little bit of clarification about the meeting we held on September 7th, and I wanted to highlight just a few things that I think might be helpful to you all. So first, our meeting on September 7th, while it did involve Main Street, present were also Robert and Gail McCandless, Keith Kiplinger, the entire city council at the time. Keith Kiplinger was the acting city manager, and Brandon Rowell, all of whom have been involved with brushing up NAC, and the minutes that follow from that meeting showed that there was consensus on every single item. So I thought I would call your attention. You have the entire PowerPoint, but part of it is maybe a little misleading because some got into funding. So I simplified it, and you have a much shorter thing that has the principles and philosophy. The first one only had the first 3 points, and there were 2 additional points that went to the principle and philosophy. And then I also just summarized 2 other items from the rest. So this is all you need to look at. Though if you like the PowerPoint, you can look at everything you want. And I'd like to, but before I do, I'd like to thank you all for tackling this. And thank each and every one of you for serving. You know, I know how much time it takes and how much commitment, and everybody really appreciates each one of you. And I have been asked by business owners, funders, individual people, artists, historians about this topic. So that's one of the reasons that we wanted to tackle it at the City Council, just to have a discussion about this. So I'm going to go over what we did not vote on it, but the principles that we did arrive at. And number 1 is it should be positive, nice to look at, people will want to see it again. Number 2, it should be historically accurate, highlights rich and diverse history, highlights current creativity, highlights the beauty of the city, region, state, and encourages exploration. It relates directly to Nacogdoches, that it's not a general theme, but something that has to do with Nacogdoches. Then the next one would be East Texas, and then, of course, Texas, in that order. Did that? You look like, if you'd stop me if you have a question on any of these. Okay. And then our approach, number 4, this was really important to us, should always be collaborative. We're in this together. The council, the staff, the community, the artists, the property owners, and we'll work together to resolve any differences and find solutions, and we don't want any politics in the middle of it all. That was all. So we highlighted those, and that took some discussion, and we felt really, we all who are participating, including non-council members, the people, the artists, and we also suggested a kind of a pre-approval collaborative process so that people could see what was proposed ahead of time instead of just coming straight here and, you know, after a lot of work's been done and being told no or yes or whatever. And one of the reasons for a pre-approval collaborative process was, for example, in some murals, there was a lot of discussion between the people who were most involved, so that there were corrections made. And then in another mural, a couple of people had said, wait a minute, that's wrong, you know, on this church or on that. So this can be a good collaborative way to head off errors and to, you know, make corrections and actually to improve things. And then you might, instead of thinking about this was just a starting point for us. There are things we didn't consider. This was early on in the mural process, so you now have a lot more under your belt. So when you all come up with what you see as the principles and philosophy, and of course it will have to come to the council, you might want to expand it. I mean, your question about, you know, how much or how it would be maintained, all those could be in this your philosophy, principles, and again, it would be guidelines, you know. So I encourage you to, you know, get a subcommittee, get a group of people who will really flesh out a good solid. It might take a little bit of research to see other communities, how they handle it, but go ahead and, you know, get something done in a, you know, working with property owners. I think that's really all I'm looking at my notes. Part of this is to actually inform people's discretion, not necessarily to you know, make huge rulings because you want people to be creative, but to inform their discretion so we all are making good decisions for the whole city. And that, I think, summarizes. If I didn't thank somebody or if I didn't say something, you can call me back up. Or
Okay.
Is that helpful? Do you have any questions of
Yeah, I do.
me? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
This collaborative.
Collaborative.
Yeah, that's it. This pre-approval. Now, that's a very difficult thing for example, as far as we are concerned.
I think that's wrong. Let me correct my statement. I don't know that it should be pre-approval. I think it should be more recommendation.
Okay.
Because you're not actually pre-approving something. You're
That's
exactly right.
Well,
It's like a recommendation. We recommend you do this, and the, you know, the property owner could say, I don't like your recommendations, and I'm bringing forward this.
and that's
Yeah.
a key here. That wasn't what I was getting ready to say, but
Thank you.
the property owner should trump everything.
Right. It's the property
And
owners.
so I've often wanted to say, with just the ones we have here,
Right.
does the property owner approve of everything you're bringing to us?
Right. And
I don't know if I've ever asked it, but I thought it. And that needs to be clear, that the property owner himself has seen what's being brought to us.
Right.
And likes it. So he could say he likes something and doesn't.
Right.
Now,
I do want to add, I've actually seen zoning things brought to us by a renter, and I have really said, now, wait a minute.
yeah, that's true. That's
You
exactly
know,
right.
It is the same way.
But as it is now, it seems like we've had these things come to us mostly through Brush Up NAC. And I have never been to one of their meetings, but that's where the collaboration is going on. And when we get these things come to us, we know it's from this group. And it's not a real open collaboration. Right. So these are things that, or you know, maybe there's a Brush Up NAC number 2, and they could say, no, we don't like that one. So you see what I mean? It becomes very loose about who's coming to us, and it should always be the owner, in my view.
Well, I can say as an owner that's been approached, and I think the committee has approved the mural, I was contacted by a member of the Brush Up Nacogdoches. They told me they wanted to put a Spanish Explorer on a building, and they brought me an application to sign, and I have not seen any markup or anything what it looks like. I just signed the application, and they came before y'all with it. I don't know if y'all saw a markup of what it's supposed to look like.
We saw it.
Did you?
Yes.
I have not seen it.
We approved it.
And I on the bill.
Well, you see, that's what should be absolutely clear. And so we've been kind of loose with that.
I was kind of
Okay.
loose on it too, I guess. I should have.
So that's just,
asked a
we're
little bit
talking
more.
about procedures.
And the guidelines, I think, would be so helpful for people, for the property owners, because if we distribute guidelines to, for example, you, John, you could see, wait, does this meet this? Does that not meet this? Well, maybe I should think of a different thing.
Well, I was.
Doesn't make it bad or whatever, but.
I've been in favor of having something on that building for a long time. I approached somebody 10 years ago about putting something there. So I guess I was, in agreement
Yeah.
because I'd like to see something on that building.
Well, I'm gonna sit down in case,
Okay.
unless you,
Someone else like to speak to this? Yes? Okay. And your name?
My name is Brandon Rao. I'm the newly elected president of Brushing Up NAC.
Oh.
And I would love to quell some of these concerns. First and foremost, I usually see you, Mr. Sloan, at the state sales.
Yes,
As
sir,
always
you
see
sure
me.
do.
Yeah. Well, we will get you that rendering of that.
Okay.
Yes, that's an extreme oversight on our part. We actually, the person that was dealing with that, Miss Lynn Myers, we thought she had given that to you, and I
Lynn's the
apologize
one
for
I
that.
talked to, yeah.
Okay.
No apology necessary. I just, it never even occurred to me.
Right.
I thought I need to see what it looked like, but.
We'll get that to you ASAP.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Yeah, we really thought we had that to you. To quell some of these concerns, I would just like to say that we really appreciate what y'all do in every way. And I grew up in Mount Enterprise, and my family's from there. And when we came to town, it was to go to Walmart. That's where you get your grocery, either there or Carthage. Growing up here, I do not want this place, just like the majority of the board of Brushing Up NAC, to become a comic book. We don't want that, and it's not going to happen. Realistically, we just got our 501c3, and we are in the process of getting the funding to do one that has already been pre-approved or approved by the board, which is the Domingo Ramon, which will be going on your wall. And then there's another one right outside of the historic district, and that one's going to be a Caddo mural. Now, I would like to say that we're no longer going to, at least for the foreseeable future, we're not going to be doing any more murals within the historic overlay because we don't want it to become a comic book. So I lived in Austin, and I saw what happened in Austin, and I lived in Los Angeles for a little while, and I mean, it goes on, and where does it stop? I think I heard y'all ask at one meeting. And who says what goes up? Because as far as I know, the historic preservation, what y'all do is y'all can just say, yes, it's already been painted on, yes, there's already been something put up on the wall, you can put it there, you can't put it there, but the design and what it contains is kind of where it gets to become a gray area. And we don't want that to happen. We want everybody, you can't make everybody happy, but we want to try. And we definitely want to include y'all in everything we do, even for the things that do not require your approval. 100% we want to include y'all. We want to let y'all know what we're doing. We want to ask what you think about it. We want your opinions. We want to include you. I think it was a mistake to not do that from the get-go, and that's what we're going to change, 100%. And it's going to be starting by getting you what you need, and then also anything in the future. Like I said, for the foreseeable future, we're not going to be doing anything here because we don't want it to get out of hand. And if a building owner approaches us, which actually happens quite often now, to do something within the historic district, we are going to ask them to come to y'all first. And if they decide, and if y'all decide that y'all want to do it, then they can come back to us and we'll do the application and we'll go through that whole process. But I like Nacogdoches to keep the historical integrity and what it's known for. It's the oldest town in Texas. You put a mural on every single wall, it's going to be just like all the other towns with the murals on them. And we don't want that. I definitely don't want that. Gail and Robert McCandless don't want that. That's half the board, right? And I'm pretty sure a couple other members maybe of the board don't. But we need an overwhelming majority in order for something to get approved within our own board. And as far as it goes right now, we're not going to do any more, okay? Outside of that, we're still going to include you in that, and we want y'all to contact us if you have any questions, whether it be about if it's historically accurate. We try to be as historically accurate as we possibly can, and we're going to be even more so now. So, in the future, moving on, we want y'all to ask as many questions as you can. I welcome them. I want you to. That's the only way we can get through this process together and actually make it fruitful for everybody involved. We want the community to be happy. We want city council to be happy. We definitely want y'all to be happy. That's just what it is. But our main goal, it's in our mission statement, and then this is where I kind of redirected the ship a little bit. Not that it was going too far off course, but we are here to tell a visual history of Nacogdoches through art. It has to be historically accurate. It has to be pertinent to the history of Nacogdoches, and that's that. Anything outside of that, sure, if a business owner, anybody wants to commission us to find an artist and do whatever it may be, right? Sure, we may do it, but that's not our goal. That's not our main mission. That's what we want to do. We want to make y'all happy in the process, but more importantly, we just want to be historically accurate. We want to stay within the realm of what y'all expect and what y'all think is expected of us. So in order to do that, I want to open lines of communication. Feel free to contact me. I'll leave my contact information for anybody who wants to at any point in time. If you have any concerns whatsoever, please reach out. Because that's what y'all are here for, and that's definitely what I'm here for. Okay? Anybody have any questions?
Do you have your mission statement and everything in writing that we could get a copy of it?
Absolutely. I can email it to anybody today.
Okay. Why don't you send it to all the board members?
Absolutely.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Super, thank you.
And to get all the emails, I can just find that online, correct? Okay, I got you. Thank you. Thank you.
What did she say?
I can call her.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but most importantly, to summarize, we are not doing any more for the foreseeable future other than what we have already had approved, and the one right outside of the historic overlay. And other than that, we're trying to move out. We're going to try to get the chamber to do something on their place, and other than that, we're going to move it on out because we do not want this place to become a comic book. I like the old brick. I appreciate the old brick, you know, especially growing up out here. I just want to keep it at least close to what it's always been, you know? All right?
Okay.
I've got just a statement.
Yes, sir.
Historically, I have 3 buildings that have advertisement painted on them.
Right.
Originally, that's what they painted on these buildings, like the Coke advertisement.
Right, right.
They didn't actually have murals, they had advertisements. What's the thought about doing that? I mentioned that to Lynn Myers when she talked to me about putting that on there. That's what originally they used to have painted on those buildings.
Right.
I can show you 2 of them right now that have remnants of the ad on there. What's the thought about doing that? Is that
Repainting those advertisements because they're...
Well, I wouldn't want to repaint them because I like them original, the one
Right.
what's there.
So you'd want to paint an
I
advertisement?
don't know. Has anybody ever suggested that instead of doing a mural? You know, in 1920 they didn't paint murals; they painted advertisements.
Absolutely.
And we're historical preservation. I'm just wondering what the thought is on that. That's just something wild question I have.
Well, as far as our organization is concerned, we, especially within the historic overlay, it has to be historic.
Exactly.
So if those advertisements have, if they can be, traced back and pertinent to the history of Nacogdoches, then yes, that would fall within the realm of what we do.
I believe it's 402. There's an event center there now that Shaw's has rented. Go in there one day and you can see what I'm talking about. You walk in on the left side, that whole side there is a cigar advertisement selling 5-cent cheroots.
Right.
To me, that's, I don't know. I like that. I think y'all are doing a good job. I think the murals are definitely enhanced downtown Nacogdoches. I like.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
But
I'll go in there and look at that.
But I've just thought about that. Why not look at that advertisement?
Okay.
Obviously, that was I didn't mean to interrupt here.
No. That's what I'm here for.
Something I've thought of, and I don't know how that would blend in with what y'all have planned or not. But just look at that and see what I'm talking about.
Well, I don't see how it would be that much. It wouldn't deviate that much from what we did with the Coca-Cola mural.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Everybody likes the Coke mural.
Right. And we got Coca-Cola to pay for it, thankfully. So.
And if you look at photographs of Nacogdoches with parades and stuff from 1920 or 1930, they have advertisement painted on the buildings. And to me, that's more historic than a mural.
That's true. And the only thing that a mural would set apart, other than, like one of the ones you're talking about, is if you were to paint a depiction of life during that time or scenery from that period. Whereas with an advertisement, not that it'd be much different, because at that point it's preference. Some people appreciate this part of history or a depiction of this event in history as opposed to the brands from that point in history,
adding to, I love what y'all did on Johnson Furniture when you painted the business on the
Right.
front, because I remember going to the shoe store there, you know, that brings back memories to me, so I love the way y'all did
Yeah,
that.
that
But
was Robert McCandless. Yeah,
okay,
he
I
thought it was
like
great.
that.
Good, good. And actually, it's funny because my mother-in-law, she goes, "Oh, they put those stores back in."
Anyway, I'm sorry to take up
No,
so
no,
much
no, no,
time here.
no.
I didn't mean to.
They're never open when I go.
Yeah, they're never open. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, yes. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate it.
Anybody else? Finally, I think at least we should consider the historic district, and you spoke to this. It is a district, and part of our job, I think, as far as a governmental body, we're to protect the district, not merely the buildings in it. And so, if your neighbor in the downtown historic district looks over at my building, or vice versa, and he constantly sees this mural, sometimes that will end up being not a happy experience. So we just really need to protect the district as a whole. And that's, you know, that's how we approve of things. That's what the zoning commission does. It protects a larger group. So I think as long as we keep that in mind, okay. Anybody else? And we have quite a bit more to go here.
I was just gonna try to sum us up a bit unless there's any more questions, I'm happy to do that. As far as principles, excuse me, the ones that we have up on the screen, is that something that we would like to use as a jumping off point? I'm just looking for some staff direction as far as what this committee would like our next steps to be. Is it something where we consider doing a subcommittee? Is it we start with these principles and say, yes, we like this, but please expand on it a bit and write it up with the city attorney writing it and making sure that I don't mess anything up?
Do we want to include the extra things that Kathleen had provided?
We can't, yes, and I apologize for not having that full presentation in your packet. I could not find the full one because it's been a minute since we had that meeting, so couldn't find the full one. But we can use that full PowerPoint and write it up in a more formal way that looks more like a principles or something like that, and then have this committee review it again in September.
I personally think it should, one of the items here, how will it affect the district as a whole, the historic district?
Okay.
Depending how large the mural is and where the mural is, it could really change how you see. I'm going to say a terrible thing, but when I see a picture of Manson in the news with the swastika on his head, I shudder. So that's all you see is when you see a picture of that man. And so we just don't want to do anything, even if it's not a swastika, it could be something pleasant. But some things become domineering, even if it's, a landscape or something. So I think how does it affect the district as a whole should be considered as a principle.
And like you said, from sexually explicit or hate speech, who determines that, though? What one person considers sexually explicit, another one may not. So that's one thing that concerns me is the different opinions at different attitudes. It's on Jerry, yeah. So that's one thing that concerns me is the different opinions of different people.
And we can look into how we can write that into principles as far as, what state statutes can be looked at or case law. And like we mentioned, Jerry can help me with some of that.
Well, just finally, those are all things but we're not speaking to brush up Nacogdoches as if you're going to do any of those things, if you understand that. Okay.
As far as I know, the Supreme Court never figured out how to define obscenity, so.
But they
You know it when you see it, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Can we go to the next item?
Yes, and I will work with our city attorney and write some of this up and then bring this back at our September meeting. And if the committee likes it, we will move it forward to city council at their meeting.
Okay. Okay, item C. Jessica?
Yes, so this is COA 2024-019. This item came before the committee at the July 1st meeting. This is the installation of an 18 by 20-foot storage building on the west side of the property at the house at 708 Park Street. This is a new build that's located in the Zion Hill Historic District. Like I mentioned, this item came before the committee, and some of the concern was the proposed color. The builder supplied just a very quick mock-up that showed, a white square with a black roof on it. It wasn't an accurate depiction of the color. And so the applicant who is here, the applicant and owner who is here today, Mr. Ortega, supplied a better picture of what the building would look like. So of course on your left is what the property currently looks like. On the right is a depiction of the metal shed, and that is more of a whitish gray color that pretty closely matches the color of the brick with a grayish roof on top that again mimics the building that is there. There was also some questions about had the surrounding property owners seen it and were they okay with this design. I did receive a letter from the applicant today that they received from one of their neighbors, Mr. Bellinger, who had said it was in favor of this design. It closely matches with the building, and I do have a copy of it if anybody would like to see that as well. I received it later this afternoon, so I can pass that around, Mr. Sloan, if you'd like to look at that. So we had that. So I had that additional information to bring to you today, and staff finds that city ordinance criteria B, J, and K could relate to this proposed construction. And I'm happy to answer any questions after public comment.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to speak, open it to the public.
Even though you all may not have read the letter that my husband wrote, we think our neighbors, Alex and Karina Ortega, have done a great job, and they're going to do a great job, and we're very supportive of what they're going to do. That's it.
Okay. Is the owner here today?
Yes.
I have a question for you. Is this building the size of the concrete slab that's there now?
That is correct, yes, sir.
So it'll fit exactly on the top of that slab?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, that's all I needed to know.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions of them?
Have you decided what materials are going to be used on the outside?
It's all gonna be a metal building, a garage shed, yes, sir.
Has there been any opposition against that?
As from,
Is using brick instead of metal, or to match more closely to the house?
right, so, the main problem with the brick is that the slab fits perfectly with the garage shed, so the brick wouldn't essentially fit outside of it.
It would hang on?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I guess I can make a statement on the other.
Sure,
On the
sure.
last meeting. They said that there was other buildings like it. As you can tell in the picture, the neighbor has one in the background as well. I guess because they brought up the metal being, I guess, not very.
I can say this, there are things that go on in the historic district that we are not ever approved.
Okay.
So that
okay.
should be no precedent.
Okay, alrighty. Well, I just wanted to make that.
There are things that are
Yeah.
going on all the time that people get away with. And I appreciate you coming to us. So, yeah, that shouldn't be a precedent.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Any questions?
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Do you want to close the public comment?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion about this COA?
I make a motion that we approve COA 2024-019 on B, J, and K ordinances.
Okay.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any final comment? This is when we make comments here. Anybody make a comment?
Yes, I have a comment.
Okay.
I had questions also the previous time when this came before us that I felt it much more appropriate that it looked more like the house itself since it's sitting out on the front of the street. If it were hidden behind the house or something, I would give myself a lot more leeway with that, but this is a historic district, and I think it should be compatible with a home, and for that reason, I'm gonna vote against it.
I'm kind of curious, I mean, did the house itself have to go through a COA process, and was it separate from the shed?
So actually, it's funny, Vice Chairman App brings up things happened in historic districts that don't always go through us. This house was actually built, and this isn't no fault of the owner, it was just kind of an oversight on several different fronts. This house was built when Park Street was completely shut down. And so when they opened it back up, I drove down and I was like, well, there's a new house there that I did not know about. So no, this house did not receive review by HLPC. Traditionally it would have, but it was completed by the time that street opened back up and we knew about it. So it did not get a review.
I mean, that could have solved our problem if it had come that we could, anyway.
Yeah, and this section of the Zion Hill District just because it fronts a different street, feels a little disconnected from the overall Zion Hill District. So I think there's always some confusion about where exactly the district is, so I don't think there was anything malicious on anybody's intent, it was just an oversight.
But it's all continuing, it's all a historic district going right down Logansport, so it's right smack in it. Anybody else here want to speak to it before we vote? Okay, all in favor of accepting this motion, this COA, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed?
Nay.
We have 3 opposed and,
No, 3, 4, and 2.
Yay.
okay, and 4 approved.
Okay.
It looks like, yep.
I'm writing this down real fast, just to make sure.
I didn't vote, if you want to know what happened. I feel like pardon?
Please clarify the vote for our minutes.
Well, if
3
you
to
didn't vote, there's not 4 to 3.
This we won. Who was against? If you were against it, okay. All right, and 4. Okay.
All right, we will move on to our next item. You ready for the next one?
Yes, we are. The next one.
So item 4D, this is COA 2024-017. This is an application for 108 East Hospital Street. The applicant is requesting the installation of 7 4-foot by 4-foot butterflies painted on lightweight ACM board that would be anchored into the exterior brick of the building at 108 East Hospital Street. In addition, the installation of lettering painted on ACM board that would measure approximately 3 feet by 8 feet. This application was reviewed at the July 1st HLPC meeting. There was a motion and a second to approve. There were 2 votes in favor of the application and 3 members did not vote, which means there was no action taken on this item. And in that case, if there's no action taken, this is brought back before HLPC to continue with the conversation. This building at 108 East Hospital Street is a 1965 building located in the downtown National Register District. In the 86 survey, it's listed as good condition, and staff finds that B, C, D, H, J, and K could relate to this project. You can see here is an existing picture of the old Mize department store facing North Street. This is a rendering that was supplied by the applicant. This rendering, of course, looks like the butterflies are painted directly on the brick, but again, the application is to paint it on a substrate that would be anchored into the existing brick. And then the wording, the Mayor's Monarch Pledge, is the additional ACM board that we reference in the staff report. And I'm happy to answer any questions after public comment.
Well, let's do it differently. If we have public comment, you want to speak, anybody want to speak to it? Okay. All right, then we'll close. Yes?
Building owner's daughter, if y'all have any questions from me.
Oh, you're the building owner's daughter.
I'm Ricky Lee, yes.
Okay.
Speaking on behalf of my dad.
Were you speaking for your father here?
Yes.
Is he absolutely for this?
Yes, sir.
He knows everything about it?
Everything about
Okay, thank you very
it.
much.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
All right, we'll close public comment. Any questions of Jessica? Anybody?
Well, I don't have any more questions than what we discussed at the last meeting. Ricky Lee had said they'll take care of it. They'll keep it in good condition, and they were the ones that wanted to attach it instead of to paint it on. And it's just down the street from the garden mural, so they kind of go together.
Okay. Anybody else? I think you had a question.
Who was approached? Did the owner approach Brush Up Knack, or did Brush Up Knack approach the owner of the building?
That may be something that Ricky, do you want to go over and answer? As far as on the staff side, I received the application, so I'm not sure what happens before that.
Ricky Lee Willoughby, speaking on behalf of Richard Hurd, owner of the building. We had actually approached someone about doing something. We've been wanting to do a mural for quite some time, and just with life happening, we finally got around to getting a hold of somebody, and we came up with this. And so, yes, we approached somebody separately. We weren't approached by anybody.
Did you come up with the butterfly theme, or did Brush Up Knack come up?
No, we had, is that? No, I was gonna say, no, it's
not
not.
Brush Up
No,
Knack?
this is not Brushing Up Knack. That's what I was
Okay.
saying. That we were not approached by Brushing Up Knack. This was between us and the artist. But the Monarchs Pledge, it's with the National Wildlife Federation, and in order to do conservation efforts to protect monarch butterfly, and then local or cities across the state could participate. And Nacogdoches is one of those cities that has chosen to participate in the mayor's Monarch Pledge and conservation efforts for the monarch butterfly.
Interesting.
Since you're here, the mayor,
The mayor's Monarch Pledge is,
Yes.
that's what it's called.
So it's not specific to our mayor.
I don't know if Randy was around, because that was what,
That
last
was, I believe it was when
July?
Mayor, I think Mayor Brophy originally started the project. So it's something that your individual cities, the mayor, whoever is in office at the time, takes that pledge. I believe that was started with Mayor Brophy, may have gone over, and I don't know how often they have to renew it. But our city does have to adopt a monarch pledge to have a mayor's monarch pledge.
And it's essentially called the mayor's monarch pledge.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll just begin before we go further among us. Do I hear a motion that we accept it, or we don't? Do I hear a motion concerning this item?
I move that we approve COA agenda item 40, oh, sorry, COA 2024-017 based on B, C, D, H, J, and K ordinances.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I second the motion.
Okay. It's been a motion and a second, so we can discuss it. We often discuss these things here. This is just a few things to consider. How these things are attached to the wall. What will the wall look like if in 10 years we take these down? That's often. Do you know how they're going to be attached to the wall? Do you know?
I think they went over that the last time.
You did?
The last
I
meeting.
wasn't here at the last meeting, so.
Yeah, at the last meeting, it was discussed they would be screwed or bolted into the wall with several on each butterfly that then could be filled in afterwards if needed when the butterflies are removed.
Okay.
My question is, and keep in mind, this is my very first meeting. If we go by the principles and philosophies of murals, it states that it needs to be historically accurate, needs to be highlight rich in this diverse history, it needs to be relates directly to Nacogdoches, East Texas, or Texas. I love butterflies, but I don't know how they relate directly related to Nacogdoches, East Texas, or Texas. Does that fit in the
Well, we have
guidelines?
taken the mayor's monarch pledge, evidently.
He's saying we've taken the mayor's monarch pledge. The city government has.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I want to know. How does that make it historically accurate?
I think one of the things that I'm just curious about is, like, looking at this, I don't know what this is. And I would just like it to there to be a plaque or something there that just like explains what it is, because it's just kind of there without context. But I can't, can't make anybody do that.
My comment would be, I'm very grateful that you guys have saved the Mize department store sign. It's a wonderful thing. That is historically significant. I personally think this detracts from this building greatly.
I agree.
It kind of doesn't fit, but that's my opinion, and I think it, and this is what we want to do, is protect buildings and not detract from the architecture of them. And this was a significant business in our town. We've all shopped there. I don't think all of us. I think I bought a suit there once when I was going to get married. Anyway, it's a significant building. I think it detracts. So that's just my opinion. So,
I agree.
Anybody else want to speak to it before we vote? Okay, all in favor of this approval of this COA, say aye.
Aye.
We have 2. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion does not carry. All right. We'll go to item E. Yes?
Can I interject here?
Please interject.
So this is the second meeting now that we've had 2 motions to approve this application that didn't receive enough votes.
That's true.
But there's been no move or motion to deny the application. So the application is still kind of pending without a denial.
I didn't know that was necessary. Is this
So-
did we know this before?
So the ordinance states that the committee should approve, deny, or approve with modifications, or take no action. So
Okay.
essentially, without approving or denying or approving with modifications, you're taking no action again. So
I see. Well, I'm just an old guy here, and I've done this many times, and we never, after we did not approve,
yeah.
that was essentially a denial. But do I hear a motion that we deny this certificate of appropriateness? I need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Any more? Thank you for that. Any more discussion? Okay, we're going to vote again. We have a motion to deny. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, same outcome. Thank you very much. That's brand new to me. Got the Supreme Court down there. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item would be 401 East Main. Certificate of appropriateness for that one.
This is, excuse me, COA 2024-024 for 401 East Main. The owner and applicant is Dennis White. He is requesting to paint a 4-foot by 40-foot section of plaster on the west wall of his building. Many of you know it as the original location of Commercial Bank of Texas. The owner is wanting to paint a mural that depicts railroad history and will feature old locomotives and old railroad depots. He has asked staff for some reference pictures and found some on his own as well. So he's trying to do this very Nacogdoches themed. Excuse me. 401 East Main is listed as contributing to the Downtown Historic District. It's a 1901 2-story brick rectangular commercial structure. Of course, in our original survey, it's listed as heavily altered first level with wood and glass windows. The owner is in the middle of a very extensive restoration project that's been approved by Hlpc, and so that description is no longer really accurate anymore. But staff find that B, C, D, F, H, J, and K relate to this proposal. We have a picture here. This is essentially the side of the building we're talking about. It's a plaster section that's about 4 feet tall and 40 feet long at the base of the wall of that building. The applicant mentioned that they were trying to take the plaster off, but as they did, all of the bricks started coming out with it, and so they replastered it, which was approved by Hlpc at the time. But now they're wanting to paint on top of that, doing some sort of mural that talks about railroad history and locomotives and things of that nature. There are some reference pictures that the applicant has supplied, as well as our Railroad Depot, and then staff has given him additional photos of the old wooden railroad depot that used to be here in Nacogdoches before it burned down. So he's thinking about incorporating all of those elements into the painting. And I'm happy to answer any questions after public comment.
Just a question, is this a brush up Nacogdoches project?
There will be none today on the agenda that are brushed
No,
up.
okay.
Just for future reference.
Great.
And this is something the owner called me and said, I like a lot of those murals downtown, I want one too, was Mr. White's comment to me. So I believe this is
Okay,
an independent project.
We like Mr. White. He's, okay. I don't really, any questions of the staff about this one? Okay, since there are no questions, I need a motion to either reject or approve of this mural.
Is there any public comment on this?
Oh, yes.
Do you want a public comment? I'm very sorry.
Well, it just
Very sorry.
struck me. First of all, you guys haven't adopted the principles yet. You just discussed them. And now you're approving murals
Well, so far we haven't
without the
approved any.
principles or whatever, well, or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
And it just struck me that that's a 4-foot mural on an unpainted wall. I love the building. I'm so glad he's doing it. But it seems we're getting ahead of the cart just a little bit here because you haven't adopted your principles yet, your guidelines.
Okay.
And it's a 4-foot tall unpainted wall, which I thought it had to be painted on to even qualify. So, just a statement.
Okay. Now, any more public comment before we? Okay, I still need a motion to either reject this mural. You can do it on the basis of, yes? Do you have public comment? Okay.
I'm Robert McCandless. I live at 410 King Street. I'm the secretary for Brushing Up NAC. We don't want redundancy either if we're doing murals. We're currently working on a project, Brushing Up NAC. Of course, we're not going to do anything for some time here until we get funding, until we get you guys involved in making sure that things work right. But we're looking at possibly a train being painted with this coal car down by the train station and the tracks, which would be much more appropriate. The size of that has no visual. It just does not fit visually. I'm an artist, and
okay.
Scale-wise, it just doesn't work for a train.
Okay. All right. Okay, now, any more public comment? All right, we'll close public comment. Okay, I need a motion to either, you can make it on the basis, on one of our guidelines, you have, one way or the other, you need to do that. So I need a motion either to accept or reject. And if we have no motion, I think that means basically.
I make a motion that we reject the request for application based on the ordinance criteria B, C, D, F, H, J, and K as relates to the project.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Good. Now public comments closed, and we'll just any comment from you. Anybody?
I think it would be odd to make calls on murals based on potential murals that people are thinking of doing, for one thing. The other thing, I think, so we talked about painting on this plaster that hasn't been painted, but it's new plaster, right? They replastered the wall.
Correct. So there was always plaster there, but the owner has essentially done a new layer of plaster over that section.
Yeah.
So he's restored the plaster.
Okay. So my understanding, I think it was in the minutes of last meeting, that people talked about the issue with painting on brick is like only if it's really old brick that you couldn't restore after you painted it. and so painting on new things isn't as much of a problem.
So it kind of depends on the HLPC seated at the time and their interpretation of the Secretary of Interior standards. Typically, older brick that cannot breathe and is made out of different material, it's fired differently. If you paint on top of it, it doesn't breathe and you actually rot the brick behind it. And a lot of times that's with the mortar as well. Some of the newer brick is more modern fired where you can pressure wash off of it, so it may not be as long lasting of an impact. Same thing with plaster. It essentially has a new plaster coat on it, so some HLPCs seated have said that's new plaster. We're good with painting it. Others have said you just restored the plaster, so we want to keep it as is. So it kind of depends on the committee's interpretation of these ordinances. So we've gone kind of both ways in the past. But traditionally, it's the older brick, the pre-1900, that kind of lime brick that will rot behind paint because it can't breathe anymore.
All right. Any more comments? No comments?
What
Yes.
if they come up with a different design other than locomotives, something that would actually be more
It's
appealing to that
It's a bank
size?
Okay.
It's about, yeah.
Yes. Well, if you would speak to this motion, that would be good. We have a motion to deny. Would you like to speak to that motion?
No.
Okay. All right. I think I would speak to it. It's going to be a very elegant building, and this might not be the place to put a mural, and that's my opinion. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think I'd have more confidence in it if we had a mock-up of an actual design. Because I mean, I trust Robert as an artist, but I'm kind of curious what it would look like, you know. And I'm sorry, I mean, I trust you saying that it would not look great at that scale, but I would be curious to see what it actually looks like.
I think one thing we should consider about blank spaces, architecturally, they serve a purpose. A blank space serves a purpose architecturally sometimes. So a blank space isn't necessarily something we want to cover up. So, anybody else? I'm trying to be quiet. Okay, well, we have a motion to deny the certificate of appropriateness. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you vote? Okay, all opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the motion carries to deny. Okay. Next COA there, Jessica.
So our last item of the day is COA 2024-021. This is for 201 East Main Street. The owner and applicant is Kim Crisp. The applicant is requesting to paint the west facade of the building at 201 East Main Street with a painting of famous figures and a "Have you ever been to Nacogdoches" wording on the side. This application again was heard by HLPC on July 1st at the July 1st meeting. A motion was made to approve the COA, but there was no second to the motion, so there was no action taken on this item. The application has not changed. It's essentially the same design, same building, but since there was no action, we brought this back to HLPC for further consideration. 201 East Main Street is listed as contributing to the Downtown National Register District, and staff find that city ordinance criteria B, C, D, H, J, and K could relate to this project. We also have a picture of the existing building, the existing side, and then, if I can change, this is essentially the rendering. A question that was brought up last time is the section that says movie screen. That is not, the application is not to put a movie screen on there, it was to leave it blank. The owner said that historically, when movies started being shown in Nacogdoches, they would project them on that wall. And so he wanted to leave a blank space to be able to do that in the future if he ever chose to. So just a clarification on that point, because I know there was a question on that last time. And I'm happy to answer any questions after any public comment.
Okay, we'll begin with public comment.
It's embarrassing. Stevie Ray Vaughan, I don't think, has ever even driven through Nacogdoches, to the best of my knowledge. I mean, he has no history here, to my knowledge. John Wayne said one line in a movie, Groucho Marx and them chased a mule. So that's the most appropriate part of it, I guess. It just seems like we're just throwing paint to be throwing paint. Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment? Jessica, is this a Brush Up Nacogdoches project?
No, it is not.
Okay. Okay, we'll close, I think we'll close public comment, and we'll begin with, I need a motion to either deny the COA or to approve it.
I make a motion that we deny the COA based on, I'm sorry, I wasn't planning to do the motion, so I didn't look
B,
at
C,
it.
D, H, and J, and K.
B, C, D, H, J, and K.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and so now's the time we discuss it. Anybody like to say anything about it?
I agree with Brad.
Okay. Okay. This is a significant building,
Yes.
and so I think, and I'm pretty sure it's a Dietrich Rolf building, is it not, Jessica?
I would have to go and double check. I'm not 100% sure if this one is or not.
Just about all of them were on that block at one time or another.
A lot of
Okay.
them were. I can
One-
research that.
One way or the other, it's a significant building. I think it quite out any doubt in my mind that it changes the architectural features of the building and it becomes domineering over it. I like the concept. I know John Wayne never was here, but
I think he was.
was he here? We'll discuss that later, okay.
But that don't mean I want his picture on the wall.
Oh, yeah. That's, yeah, just because Aunt Sally came once, you don't want her picture on the wall.
No.
Okay. I thought, very seriously, I think it really changes that building significantly, and it changes the neighborhood in some way. So I would say that we should deny this one for sure.
Now, it was brought up during the last meeting that this wall has already been painted.
Yes, it has.
Yes, that it had already been painted.
Well, it would be even more convincing if the wall was still old brick. That would be absolutely stronger. But even though it's painted, I think it nevertheless changes the building.
I agree with that. It is pretty distracting.
Anybody else? Okay, then I'll call a vote. All in favor of denying this COA?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All in favor?
Opposed.
Pardon?
All opposed.
I know. Or, pardon me. All opposed. I'm sorry.
Nay.
Keep me in line. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. The motion carries.
And one note, our next meeting is on a Wednesday. We move the meetings to Wednesday if our Monday meeting falls on a holiday, so your next meeting will be Wednesday, September 11th at 4 p.m.
Okay. And maybe we'll have a new president when I come back.
Are we adjourned?
Yes, we are adjourned.
Thanks, sir.